Hey people, um, I'm going to speak a bit in this video about football hooliganism. Now that's sort of self-explanatory, but if you don't understand what hooliganism means, it's an old word in the English language. Actually, it descends from someone I believe called Patrick Hooligan, who was an Irish ruffian at a football match in the 1880s, and from then the word hooligan has been used to describe people who basically cause mayhem at football matches. Now, today there was a local derby match going on between Sunderland and Newcastle. For those who follow football, you'll realise there's a big rivalry between the two cities. And I was with a friend in the shopping centre having a coffee. I could see lots of fans going through. Most of them were behaving themselves, there was no major problems. But seeing the police around, it sort of got me thinking about this subject a bit. And I'd like to just talk a little bit about it. Firstly, one thing has to be strongly acknowledged. The situation in this country, in the UK, has significantly improved in recent years from the dark days of, I'd say, the sort of late 70s to, let's say, the mid 90s, when football hooliganism was a really big problem and it was basically called the English disease, and the Scots weren't much better. That would be whereby every time the English or the Scots played abroad, there would be absolute mayhem, and the collective hooligan firms would make their presence felt, and they would vandalise basically the centre of European capitals and around the world. And this really gave our country a bad image. It gave England a bad image, it gave Scotland a bad image, it gave Britain collectively a bad image. Now, by no means would it be fair to say that England and Scotland are unique in this. There's many other parts of the world that have suffered from a reputation for football violence. In more recent years, Russia has had a reputation for that. Some of the former Yugoslav republics like Serbia. Turkey has a reputation for it. At the beginning of this year, there was serious football violence in Egypt, although that was interlinked with the political situation there. Latin America, they take it almost religiously. I believe there was even once a war fought over football between Paraguay and Uruguay. Apologies if it may have been Costa Rica and somewhere else, but there was actually a full-scale pitched war between two Latin American nations over football. So it would be wrong to say the UK is the only country that has this reputation. It's probably been seen all over the world. But I think it is fair to say that we did stand out for quite a while. What happened was in the 1980s there was several high-profile football stadium disasters. Now, those weren't all a result of football hooliganism. There's been the much debated Hillsborough tragedy, and the Sun actually distorted what actually happened there. That wasn't, I repeat, that wasn't a result of football hooliganism. So I just want to make that clear. But I'd like to point out a few things. Just because the problem has reduced does not mean it's gone. You still have violence almost predictably when you have derby matches, say between Sunderland and Newcastle, Manchester United and Manchester City, Glasgow Celtic and Glasgow Rangers. There's a big rivalry in Scotland up there, especially with the sectarian issue. And there's certainly between a lot of the London teams. I think Chelsea and West Ham have a thing, and there's other examples. Cardiff, Leeds both have a reputation. I'd like to just say one thing. I don't care what team you're representing. If you cause disorder at a football match, then as far as I'm concerned, you're scum. And I strongly support government measures to show zero tolerance towards these people. I really think that we're kidding ourselves if we think we should take this with anything other than the seriousness it deserves. And the reason we should take it so seriously is because not only does it give our country a bad image, it turns our city centres into war zones, and it puts other people at risk who aren't involved in the football. In other words, if you're going to work or you're meeting up with friends or something and you're not remotely interested in football and you get caught up in the violence, that's an example of what I'm talking about. Quite often, women and children are at risk. These people are just mindless animals, and that's an insult to animals. And you know what? I find it amusing when I see videos and they debate about, oh, your hooligans are worse than ours. Like they think it's something to boast about. What you're doing is you're bringing your team into disrepute. You're bringing your city into disrepute. It's nothing to boast about. And you can come out with all your usual comments. Oh, you're gay, man. You're. That's what they usually come out with. I don't care because I have more class than these dumb animals will ever have. Um, they're just mindless, boneheaded thugs, and they should be treated as such. Um, and I don't want this to be misinterpreted. I have no problem with enthusiastic fans. And it has to be said, the vast majority of football supporters are normal, decent people who just support their team. And I don't believe that tough measures should involve collective punishment. So I don't believe, for example, when you have a case where people are committing violence, then the police punish everyone. That would be very wrong and can lead to a lot of problems. But I do believe the second that someone commits even minor disorder, they should be banned for life. There should be an absolute zero tolerance approach. And if you're thinking that's too heavy handed, well, I ask you, what is the alternative? Where do you draw the line? If you don't have a zero tolerance approach for those minor sort of offences, and you say, oh, well, we'll let them away with that, that will graduate into more serious offences. You can guarantee it. So you need a zero tolerance approach. These people are enemies of this country. They give our country a bad name. They give the sport a bad name. I'm not just focusing on football. That applies to any sport. I've made another video about the behaviour of some fans at boxing matches, which after football is probably the sport which next has the biggest problems with this. If you're a real football fan, you'll agree with me that there needs to be a zero tolerance approach to this. And I do give various clubs credit for taking this issue seriously, and they have taken the issue seriously in the same way they've taken racism in football seriously. They have to take hooliganism seriously. And you know, I've heard psychologists and social scientists and so on try to make excuses for them. There are no excuses. They'll say things like, oh, they're in a dead end job. It's male tension being unleashed on a football pitch. Well, there's many other ways to unleash your male tension. You know, go and chop wood for an hour. You know, there's no excuses, none whatsoever. It's just, I really despise these people. I despise what they represent. I despise what they do, and it makes me sick when people make excuses for them. You know, if you're such a pathetic life that you have to beat someone up over a football match, what sort of sick mindset do you have? You're going to beat someone to a pulp for no other reason than they happen to be from another city? That's insane. And I'm well aware that, you know, football is a very passionate sport. I'm not into football, but I do appreciate that it drives passions high. I respect that. And like I say, you know, I've all respect for people who want to just be enthusiastic and support their team. But I staunchly believe the second they start committing disorder, whether that be fighting outside the stadium, pitch invasions, throwing missiles at players or referees, using provocative slogans, i.e. mocking disasters and so on, then they should be banned for life. No ifs, buts or maybes, banned for life. And most problems, I should say, that occur around football occur outside the stadiums. And that's an area that needs to be taken seriously. Football stadium design has hugely improved in this country, and that has been collective efforts by various governments. Since the Hillsborough disaster, football stadium designs have hugely improved. And again, I reiterate, Hillsborough was not a result of hooliganism. This has been resolved in inquiries, and that was a result of bad management, an overcrowded stadium. It wasn't hooliganism, and there has been a thorough inquiry into that tragedy. But when you have a sport as popular as football is, and it is by far the most popular sport in this country, you have to have a safe environment when you're dealing with thousands and thousands of people. That isn't just safe stadium design. That is also making sure that those people who are going out for the sole purpose of causing problems, there has to be an absolute zero tolerance approach to them. Um, and they may think they're big men because they're in a group, but on their own they're nothing but pathetic losers. Um, I had a few verbals today thrown my way. I just ignored it because of my hair color. Ginger bastard, etc. I didn't care about that. But I was meeting a female friend, and honestly, if any one of these animals had have hurt her, I can't guarantee I wouldn't have had to get in there and defend her, because when these people have a few drinks, they just become boneheads. They don't think. They just. And I do think that alcohol should be completely banned from football matches. I don't know how you would regulate that, but certainly not sold at football matches. I think there should be zero tolerance to that. And you can say that, oh, you have alcohol and you're not going to commit trouble, but I'm afraid there has to be some sacrifice because the risk is too great. There are many people who will have alcohol, will cause disorder. And again, I'm not naive. I know people can be enthusiastic. I'm not suggesting for a second people be reserved and they don't show enthusiasm. Enthusiasm's great. It shows civic pride. That's a good thing, to show civic pride. It shows people are proud of their city. But there's a fine line between that sort of civic pride and enthusiasm for your team and just being an absolute lowlife and just embarrassing your team, embarrassing your city. And these animals may think that they're just fighting with each other. I'm sorry, but I do see them as animals. I think they're absolute filth. They may think they're just fighting with each other, but when they start rioting, like mindless thugs, then they're putting other people at risk. They're putting the players at risk. They're putting women and children at risk. They're putting men who are minding their own business at risk. And they think they're soldiers. They're not. They're just dumb animals who happen to have strength of numbers. Any idiot could be strong when you're in a gang of people. Anyone could. They're not men. They're just boneheaded fools. And this, by the way, has nothing to do with the fact that I'm not interested in football. I know many football fans and footballers who thoroughly agree with me about this. There just has to be a zero tolerance, and there's no excuses for them. None. Absolutely none. And I have come across a few managers. I believe there was a manager somewhere in Wales who was making excuses for them. I believe he should be hounded out of his job for that. I believe anyone in a senior position in football who makes excuses for these jobs should themselves face immense pressure from politicians, from campaigners, from the police, from decent supporters. There's no excuse. None. And I'll leave it there, but and this applies to other sports as well. I say the same thing about boxing fans. Again, people can be enthusiastic for their fighter, but the second they start turning to disrespecting the other fighter or, committing violence, or it just sickens me. Because, a mob that's out of control is a very dangerous thing, and there's only one approach to that, and that's sheer iron force. And in those circumstances, I've spoken about police brutality before, and I still oppose police taking a method of collective punishment. But there has to be zero tolerance to football hooligans. And I do support banning them for life. Which may sound harsh, but, it's their own fault. So that's just some views on football hooliganism. They're traitors to this country. They're traitors to whatever city they think they're representing. And let's just get over this political correctness. They're not fans. They're not fans. They're hooligans. And that's all they are. Okay. Rant over.